So moved.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Kirschner,
Yes.
Commissioner Paradiso,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes. All right. We have a special visitor today, so we'll bring Corbin Height in. He is a recent Tiffin Columbian grad, and he has had some exciting things happen with him in the past year. And so he was with us previously, and I'd like him to come back in and tell us about his science.
Right.
Welcome.
Good morning.
Welcome.
It's going good. So last year I came to you. I had just gone to state with a project over kind of over-the-counter pain medicine in general. And this year I wanted to take that a little bit further. So last year I had tested at the rate at which different pills dissolved. So kind of a physical, very outside observation. And so when I decided I wanted to take this deeper, I actually went up to the University of Toledo and they let me use their machine called an X-ray diffractometer. Basically, it's how I can do a chemical analysis of different powders. And so I was actually able to the machine shoots X-rays at whatever I put in it. So I crushed up a ibuprofen pill is what I decided to kind of focus on this year. And it actually gave me like different chemical markers that I could then identify what was inside the pill. So what I ended up doing was ibuprofen comes in 2 different types, just kind of out in the world. That's what it does. And each have different properties. So I was able to research these 2 properties. And then when I found out how much was in each of the pills, I could actually find a difference between the generic and name brand once again, and kind of how they acted inside the body.
Wow. Corbin, was that your state? Was that a project that you entered into the state competition? Or was it something you did afterwards? Okay.
Yeah, I could compete any year in high school. And so last year I was able to go to state. And then this year we went virtual just 2 weeks shy of the district competition.
Yeah.
But actually at that competition, I qualified for state, and then I qualified for the International Science Fair, which was going to be in Anaheim, California this year. But I still qualified, and I just don't get to go.
So Corbin, what did you determine when you did your analysis regarding generic and name brand ibuprofen, for example? Which one is more effective?
So when you say effective, it's kind of hard to quantify what that would be. I can tell you that there's of the 2 different types of ibuprofen, one is it's much less harsh, and it's a little more potent, so it relieves the pain a lot better than the other one would, while the other one relieves pain in a slightly different way. It's a little harsher on the body, and a lot of research says that it's just not as effective. And your generic ibuprofen pills have more of that harsher, less effective ibuprofen than your name brand does.
Okay, so if you were advising someone about which pill to take for any aches and pains, it would always be a name brand. And is there one specific name brand of ibuprofen that you feel is better than others?
So Advil is the only name brand that I had a chance to test. So I can't speak for all of them, but I can say that Advil was the one I tested and found to be better than the generic counterpart.
So are acetaminophenes next?
We'll see what's next.
Okay.
I've not ventured into acetaminophenes yet.
What's next for you, Corbin?
So I move out, first week of August. I'm going to Notre Dame next year.
Wow. Go Irish. Okay. Congratulations. And what will you be studying?
Right now I'm enrolled in neuroscience, but I may change to biochemistry, kind of just because of this project is a biochemistry project, and I loved it so much that it may sway me to change.
You have to strike that touchdown Jesus pose that's in the middle of the campus there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we might be
looking for a cure for the COVID here, coming out of Tiffin, Ohio, the way you're going.
Yeah, I was excited to see in terms of like across the state who had their project, who managed to pick it up in time to study that. Yeah, definitely interesting where that's going to go.
Just curious, your process to choose Notre Dame, how did that come about?
Well, my dad has been a fan for as long as I remember. And so it was in my list of schools that I applied to. And when I got in December, I really, like, if you asked me, I didn't think I was going there. It just wasn't my top choice. But I realized, like, it's close to home. It's a great environment. Like, it's just, it had so many different factors for me that ended up, like, turning out to be the best school for me. And I mean, its STEM program is very, very nice, very highly recognized. So
So it's close enough to home, but far enough away.
yeah,
I got you.
Well, thank you for joining us and telling us about your project. My daughter went to State Science Fair and enjoyed the process at every level. And I think that's the thing that's kind of lost is, I mean, you don't compete once, you could compete multiple times and you advance to next rounds and it gets, it's a funnel. And so the fact that you've made it to the pinnacle is really to be commended. And hopefully, as you get into your junior and senior projects at Notre Dame, you can come back and visit with us and tell us what you're doing. So thanks for joining us today.
One more thing, Corbin, one more thing. Did I understand you correctly? The Anaheim, the international competition, is that a go as of now?
no, that has been canceled.
That's been canceled. Okay, that's what I thought.
It was going to be in May, second week, I believe. But I still get a medal and a certificate in the mail. So I am an alum of the program and I qualified. I just don't get to compete in Anaheim.
That's a big deal, international to qualify. So congratulations. And
Thank you. Thank you.
wish you all the best. Thank you.
So when you make some big scientific breakthrough on some topic, you'll report, one of the first places you report something county commissioners, right?
Absolutely.
All right, perfect.
Good. Again, thanks for joining us. That's awesome. It's amazing.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome to stick around on the meeting, but we're going to move on with some other business less exciting than what you shared with us.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. County Administrator report.
Just a couple things. Obviously, we had storms come through yesterday. So our maintenance is out assessing some damage. Our large barn out south of town had some damage. I think the dog warden had just sent a work order in to have John check something out. We had a roof at the sheriff's office. We're going to have somebody come out today and look at it. Not quite sure if it was actually the roof or if the wind's coming in sideways, might have just come in through a vent. So they're going to check that out. So we've already put a call into Corsa just to let them know we may have some things coming. The Justice Center and the CSB was out last night. John was up here till late. Sheriff come up. The generator worked. It kicked on all the emergency lights. It kicked on the elevator, which nobody was in there to need it, but it came on, and our data center room came on. So I guess that was a good way to test it, and it worked. The only other update, fortunately, this was before the storm. The air conditioning unit, there's 2 units above the H block at the jail, and he's had it fixed a couple times, and he said the compressor unit just can't be fixed again. So we had some funds in our contingencies under the capital improvement line. It's about a little under $5,000. So I moved it over and told him to go ahead and get it fixed because obviously we need to keep that cool. It's getting hot out. So I think that's all I had. Yep.
Yeah, just a couple clarifications for people who are listening that may not follow us that closely. Corsa is our insurance company. It's a cooperative insurance program through the County Commissioners Association of Ohio. It's independent of them, but they underwrite us and help us mitigate risk and any losses we have. So if you hear us refer to Corsa, it is our property and casualty insurance. And, Tony knows a lot about that. He's had some years in that industry. So it's a good program. We're fortunate to have them. In that vein, one of the things they do is they do help us evaluate and mitigate risk. One of the things that they do for us is they have Corsa University, and Corsa University helps us, tackle tough problems that we don't have the resources to tackle locally on an individual basis. And so one of the things we've pulled forward is Kylie pulled out the modules in Corsa University on race relations and inclusion. And so we have that list available. So I just want to remind our elected officials that if they're looking for some further training for their staff, that we do have some things available for them through Corsa as part of our program. The other thing is that I wanted to mention is on the data room, Commissioner Kirschner and Commissioner Stacy and I made the decision when the Justice Center was being built to invest in a generator that was large enough that would continue to power the data center in the event we would have any kind of power outage. And so that demonstrates the need for that generator, and it also demonstrates the importance of having all county-owned servers in a server room where it's safe, secure, and power backed up. So just put that out there for people who haven't followed this for a while. And since I'm chattering, I'll just go ahead and finish my commissioner report. And one of the things I wanted to bring up to Mike and Tony is as we move into the second half of this year, I think it'd be a good time for me to pass the gavel to one of you all, because as we go into the next budget cycle, you're the ones that are going to have to lead this organization through the next fiscal year. So, give that some thought, and let's see if we can't make a transition here in mid-year. So other than that, other commissioner reports. Tony, you got anything?
Just nothing specific. Let Mike talk about the fair. The fair board met, the fair's on. I thought we had a nice conversation this week with the electeds. We continue to communicate on a weekly basis as buildings are starting to open, and we're just all trying to figure out how to try to normalize a little bit with extreme caution. I think financially, it's just too early to tell in the cycle how things are going to land. As a commissioner, I feel very good that when we acted and then the way we acted and the amount that we cut back to 20%, if we could do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing. I think we got out ahead of it. It's just going to take, I believe our August budget commission meeting will start to reflect some runoff and give us a little better idea. And how these next 6-8 weeks go will say a lot. But basically financially, we're continuing to move forward with the cuts we made. And the positive note is we don't seem to be trending, at least as of right now. We can't see a trend any worse than that, but we're certainly not in a position to report, anything better than that. So that's kind of where we're at, just to reset everybody now that we're 6-8 weeks into this. I think we're in a good position, but we're cautious, and it's a fluid conversation with all the electeds and amongst ourselves. So that's all I have. Mike?
Tony, do you want to mention airport or wait till they get done with their meeting?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, Tony.
Yeah, I'd be glad to mention the airport. Sure. We are in the process of resurfacing the taxiway at the airport. This is all funded through federal money. They have hit a snag, basically a problem, that we took a couple inches of aggregate off the top prior to the inch and then 2-inch surfacing. When they did that, they hit some subsurface that, for lack of a better word, is kind of soft and mushy. Water was kind of coming up. So there's a couple sections now exposed in the taxiway that were not anticipated to be in this position we're in. So there's a meeting going on now at 10. Kylie from our office is out there. I went out, met with Brad this morning, drove the taxiway. So I have a visual of what's going on, but our consultants out there, and they're all trying to see what the next plan would be to rectify it. But you know, these things happen. We'll see how it plays out.
Okay, thank you, Tony.
Yep. Mike?
Yeah, a couple of things we have touched on the fair, and as you know, up until Tuesday, actually, the local health department commissioners controlled what the procedures would have to be if we had the fair. But then on Tuesday, I think it was, the governor issued an executive order as it related specifically to fairs and outlined how things would need to be done. I would say, at least from my view, it was almost a letter of encouragement or a executive order of encouragement to have the fairs, with the emphasis on the junior fair and the kids that have been out there working hard all year long to show their animals or to show the projects that they've done. So there's specific guidelines as it relates to large gatherings, livestock competitions, grandstands, other exhibitions, campgrounds, food, on down the line. And I think that if anything, some of the standards may be loosened by the time it gets there. Now there is one change, from what I understand. The dates of the fair are July 27th to August 2nd, which is a week later than typical. So mark your calendars for that. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that this is another example of volunteers in our county. I have not had an opportunity to go to a fair board meeting before, but we have a group of 30 or 40 dedicated individuals who work very hard all year long. The fair is the culmination of that, and I think somebody told me that we had 250,000 visitors at the Seneca County Fair last year, which is a much larger number than I would have guessed. But along with that, you've got the Horse Race Association and the guys that run the Demolition Derby and the people that arrange for the food and every other item that happens out there. And my hats go off to them for their hard work. And I'm pleased that there will be a fair and a junior fair. And we can only wish them the best. And I will just emphasize again, as I always try to, there is some personal responsibility here too, right? I mean, they're not going to crowd the stands. It'll be a 50% capacity. And the food will be handled only by you and the server. But, if you feel that you're in a group that is susceptible, please wear a mask. If you feel uncomfortable, don't show up. We'd love to have as many people as possible, but don't put yourself at risk. That's what I have for today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good update on the fair.
Shane,
Stacey?
we'll probably have to let the fair know that we'll need to not use the public safety building because they usually put flowers in that training room. And right now that training room's full of PPE. I think John Spar is going to have the shipment that's planned for that week shipped somewhere else for that week, so we don't have to come in with a truck. But I think we should just let them know ahead of time, because I kind of thought they were, might not have the fair with some of the health departments, so I wasn't gonna worry about it. But so I'll give them a call and talk to them, let them know.
Yeah, Stacy, I think that's a great idea. I would take it one step further at this point and invite the fair manager. I'm not sure of her name, so I'm not going to say it, but it sure would be nice to have someone representing the fair or the fair board here reporting to us in the very near future about specifics. And I think that they typically meet once a month. I think they're meeting every week up until the fair at this point in time to get things organized. They don't have the lead time they had, so it would be nice, Stacy, if we could invite somebody from the fair board in to talk about what their specific plans are, because it's a big deal.
Okay.
Yeah, and this illustrates the point that long-term, having EMA, EMS at the fairgrounds is not optimal. We've identified that as a weakness, and at some point we have to fundamentally change the relationship of that facility with the fairgrounds. And I think the most logical thing is to relocate it. Here we are in the middle of a pandemic, and EMA has never been more important to us. And, we of course want the fair to happen, but there's necessary functions that are happening there, and it's just not long-term viable. So this just illustrates that point. Our master plan is to get it moved. We continue to look for funding for that. And, maybe this is the time to use that illustration. All right, old business. I don't see any new business. We have some legislation that's pending that's I wanted to talk about. If we could unmute Mike Ditto, and we can talk about the CARES Act and some federal legislation that's going on. I just want to make sure that the three of us are on the same page, and I want to hear from Mike, and then we'll go ahead and get on with the rest of the agenda. So Mike, you had sent an email earlier in the week indicating that there is some federal legislation pending, and of course we could use a status update of the state legislation. I believe it passed the House and Senate. Is it in conference?
Yes, it's in conference now. So that's Senate Bill 310. That's the one we've talked about on a few different occasions. This one specifically would provide approximately $350 million to local governments, including Seneca County, for COVID-related expenses. That went to the Senate. That the House added quite a few amendments to it. The Senate doesn't quite agree with those just yet, so that is in conference committee now. We are expecting and hearing that this should be taken care of in fairly short order. So we'll know more on that right away, and we'll probably know a little bit of a status update on that tomorrow.
Because they're out of session starting Friday, is that correct?
That's right. That's right. And we know that the Senate will continue to be in session. I think that the question mark is what the House is going to do. So we're waiting on some guidance from the speaker as to when they'll be back. So we're hopeful that it'll be done in short order. And
has Governor DeWine signaled if he's on board with either one of these legislations? I have not heard that.
Generally speaking, he is on board with the original intent of 310. I think he's probably not in favor of some of the amendments that are in there, but he has already instructed OBM to provide guidance and to set up portals for all of the counties and all of the cities to set up their individual funds to be able to get the money once it's available. So it is every expectation that the governor will sign this bill soon.
So let me ask a couple follow-up questions, Mike.
Sure.
Okay. Well, you know where I'm coming from mostly, but $350 million is the amount that they've appropriated. Now, first question is, am I under the correct assumption that the money has to be dispersed? And when I say the money, I'm talking about the $1.2 billion by October 20.
I believe that's right. It is sometime in October, correct? It must be, because then it has to be spent by the end of the year.
So the other $850 million at some point has to be appropriated to the counties sometime before October 28. And there is some discussion about whether that 850 would have to be directly related to COVID or if it could be used as augmentation to general fund, right?
Spot on.
Okay. So we got 350 hopefully coming our way, or our portion of that. And then whatever the 850 is. Now, is the calculation still based on local government funds?
Yes, it is. It is similar to the local government fund structure, correct?
Okay. All right. But there is some talk and some actually some things in writing that some of the money may be able to be used for things other than COVID related as we go down the road.
That's right. And that's actually, there's two facets to that. There's additional Treasury guidance that has come out to where they are certainly tweaking that a little bit. But also there is, as was said in my email to all of you, it's House Resolution 7094, sponsored by Ohio Congressman Warren Davidson. And that piece of legislation is actually somewhat critical to get done, because that would allow for local governments to spend that money for previously budgeted expenses that were not able to be paid because of the COVID epidemic. So that really gives essentially maximum flexibility to Seneca County to do with what you deem to be best. And that would be very helpful to get that passed. I talked to his chief of staff earlier this week. They have every intention of working this bill very hard, but they see it as something that's going to pick up steam.
So our responsibility then, when we get our share of the first tranche, the 350 million, is to then disperse that to townships as well as needed, as we would typically do.
Yes.
Okay.
And municipalities as well, right, Stacy?
Correct. Yeah, cities are part of that as well. That's right.
Okay. And do we have a preset formula for that?
No, in fact, I have a call with OBM this afternoon, asking them that exact question to find out exactly, based on the current language, what the distribution would be for the county and how that formula would work out. So as soon as I have that info, I'll be sure to send it your way.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because we want to be fair.
Mike, we had a discussion with Julie. Shane, you might want to help me on this. There's a formula. If we didn't do anything and the money arrived tomorrow, I believe there is a mechanism in place in Seneca County to distribute that out. Is that correct, Shane? And I think what Mike is saying is, Mike Ditto, there may be some flexibility in how that's done. We already have Stace, you might want to help me. I don't have the right wording, but there's a
formula
that goes out to the townships that we have established, right?
But isn't most of that based on proper assessments that have been passed in the past? Millage is what the word I'm looking for here. Isn't a lot of that based on millage as opposed to just based on a new pot of money?
I think that's right.
Revenue share with the state, and then
that's right.
we have an agreed upon formula locally that distributes those funds. So the presumption is that we would continue to use that same formula. My bigger concern, Tony, is if one political subdivision has a lot of expenses and another political subdivision doesn't have any expenses, and that money has to be tied to COVID-related expenses. If we don't get the flexibility, we could end up with stranded money if we distribute it according to that formula.
I get it.
One entity might have a deficit and the other may have a surplus.
Yeah, and it's a lot of that's about documentation on the other political end of things. Some of the folks are taking it very seriously and making certain that they are very specific about COVID, and others, I don't want to say haphazard, but they're not as efficient as they might be.
No, so Shane, I think that's a good point. We would want to, as commissioners, it would be nice to have that flexibility.
Yeah.
A-
So one of
abs-
the reasons I wanted this to be on the agenda is so that we could send a united message to Congressman Jordan and asking him to support this current legislation at the federal level that would give us more flexibility on how we spend the money. And I should mention, I guess I should have mentioned it in my report, is we do appreciate that Congressman Jordan took the time to come to our office, sit down, ask us how things were going with the community, especially as it related to the pandemic. And, we did our kind of social distancing meeting, and, he was really interested in listening. And we did express, some concern about the flexibility, but again, just a shout out. I mean, that's good constituent service right there when a congressman shows up at your office on a Friday and gives you 30 minutes of his time. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
I absolutely agree with you, Shane. And the good news about that is that the congressman has been very consistent over the last 6 years of mine anyway, to show up here on a regular basis. I mean, I don't think a quarter goes by that he isn't either physically here or on the phone with us discussing items. I love the idea of asking him to support the legislation. I think we ought to have Jimmy put together a letter, but also thanks him for being here and the conversation and being specific about the federal legislation that would allow us to be more flexible in spending some of the CARES Act money.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note, Mike, that we didn't agree with everything he said, but he still comes. I mean that we're able to have that dialogue, and that's okay. He's he's willing to listen.
Just to circle back, Mike, before, but to circle back for all the listeners, at this point in the county, in our budget, in our revenue process, we have not received any of this CARES Act money. We've got a couple bucks for 20-some thousand for the Board of Elections, and that just handled postage, et cetera. So, these are big numbers that will definitely be taken in consideration. This first wave of 350 million is one thing, and then we're anticipating another wave of money. Don't know what that is, don't know what the restrictions are going to be, but until we know and get that, we are operating in the county as if we don't have it. And those are things that will start to affect how this all comes out. And there may be, and that's all from round that's already been passed and approved some time ago. There may be another round that comes up that we don't know about yet. So until all that kind of shakes out, I mean, I just want everybody to know those are big matrix that we don't have in calculating revenue streams.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to emphasize the fact, Tony, that there is $1.2 billion left after the big five got their money. Right. $350 million is what this House Bill or Senate Bill 310 is going to disperse theoretically to us. But there's another amount that's more than twice that should be to us by October 28th. Now, what restrictions are going to be on that, we don't know. We're hoping that it will be used to supplement ongoing expenses, but we don't know that. But so you're right, there are two buckets of money that we know specifically, and there may be more stuff that we're not aware of at this point.
And then I have one more question, Shane, if I may, from Mike Ditto. So we've been discussing CARES Act money, revenue. I'd like to ask you for a update on the capital budget, Shane, and all the listeners. We had some really good projects in the queue. The big one would be the ADA and the health department renovation, that whole wall inside, and Opportunity Park, and then we also, so that's all been put on hold. So we're still a little bit hopeful that maybe some of that will come back, and maybe not all our projects, but there might
Sure.
be money. So could you give us an update there?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was one of the big things that so many people were working on leading up to the COVID crisis. And the pot of money seemed pretty generous for the entire state, $2.6 billion in higher ed projects and $150 million in community projects that we were hopeful to get some of that. And I think it's certainly questionable now. There is still a desire among the legislators to do a capital budget. But the talk that I have heard as of late is that that is something that is probably not going to be determined until the lame duck session of this year, which will be after the November election, because there is a budget shortfall now because of COVID-19 on the current fiscal year, which doesn't end until the end of this month. And then there's a budget shortfall starting for the next fiscal year. So I think they're over the summer going to be spending some time doing a sort of a holistic review of all of the state's finances and see what kind of money will be available for debt issuance for capital projects. I think the legislators know, I'm certain that they know that these are important projects to the community, but we're also trying to work different angles through Congressman Jordan's office and through other entities to see if there might be grants or other opportunities that can help fund some of the projects you requested. We worked with you all on the money that was distributed to the county fairgrounds, that should be coming sometime later this month. So we're hopeful, cautiously optimistic is probably the way I would put it, but it's still a little uncertain as to whether or not there will be a capital budget in its typical form.
Just as a segue to that, Commissioner Thomas, I wanted to, one of the things that I forgot to mention with the fair is, Mike mentioned the $50,000 that's coming to Seneca County Fair. A separate $50,000 has also been awarded to those counties who are conducting a fair this year, just to help bolster the idea that they decided to go forward with the fair. If the county does not have the fair, they would get $15,000 towards next year's. So one of the one of the factors in making the decision to go forward with the fair is the fact that there would be a $50,000 grant to the Seneca County Fair to help ease the loss that probably will occur by virtue of holding the fair this year. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget to mention that it's confusing because both of them are $50,000.
Right.
One is for projects, and this one is to be put in place to help with operating costs for the cost of the fair in 2020.
Okay, just to remind everyone, Mike Ditto is with Highbridge Consulting. Mike is a longtime player in Cap Square, and we contracted with Highbridge Consulting to help us with the capital budget because we had some very good projects that we thought had merit, and we wanted to take them, and put our best foot forward at the State House. When our budget issues started here locally, Highbridge and Mike Ditto said they valued the relationship here and would continue to work with us at no charge at this point, and it's been invaluable. So, I'd be remiss if I didn't call that out specifically and thank Highbridge for continuing to work with us as we navigate, difficult financial times.
Thank you.
With that said, I think Mike made a motion that we support this federal legislation, and Tony, would you be willing to second it? And we could get a vote so that we can pass it. So Jimmy, we're going to ask you to write a letter in support of the, it's HR.
I believe it's 7094.
7094, flexibility in the CARES Act funding. And we'll pass that along to Jim Jordan and Bob Latta and Brown and Portman, and of course a letter thanking Jim Jordan for being here as well. So any further discussion on that?
Shane, I would like to ask Mike Ditto. We got an email from CCAO telling us that we needed to pass a resolution. I'll just read the title: fulfilling the requirements of the Ohio Senate Bill 310 for the passage of a resolution in order to receive and expend federal funds under Section 5001 of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security CARES Act. Um, do we need to do that now? Should we do that today? I just received this from CCAO this week that said it will need to be done. So we drafted up, but I wasn't sure if we needed to do it yet.
I had not heard that specifically. I know you have to set up the online portal to create that's all taken care of.
Yep.
But if there, I certainly would trust the CCAO guidance on that you would need to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Nikki, can we just get a roll call on the support of that so we have that in the record? Support of 7094 House Resolution.
Commissioner Kirschner,
Yes.
Commissioner Paradiso,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mike Ditto. Stacy, do we want to bring in Joe at this point, or do you want to go ahead and do your new business?
No, I think we had him at 10:30, so.
Yep.
There we go. Hey, Stacy, how you doing?
Aye.
Commissioners, thanks for having us. I have an additional representative from ABM, Scott Mason, on the line here. Scott, I believe that's you down there. You're just listed as Scott on here.
Jimmy would have to unmute him, I think.
Jim, will you unmute Scott?
Yep, Scott should be able to unmute himself. I just made him a co-host, so he'll have control of that.
And it worked. Hello, everybody. I'm in my truck right now, so I'm not going with a video. But I'm always in movement. But yes, I do work with Joe, and thank you very much for your time today.
All right. Can everyone see my screen here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And to give a little bit of a kind of an introduction here as far as where this came about, we've been working with Stacy, and John Logston has helped a lot. We started looking at this. I think Stacy was at the end of last year, maybe beginning of this year. This presentation, I think things started happening in March with COVID, and we got pushed off a little bit. But everything you were talking about today is a great kind of segue into what we wanted to share, which is energy conservation and really revolving around sustainability, which is great, but using this as a relief, financial relief for the county based on some of the things that are happening. And we have some offerings that we've been able to provide to other municipalities that we'll dive into. And we also conducted a preliminary analysis as far as some potential savings and capital improvement funding that could be realized through this type of program. So pretty excited to share this with you. If you have questions, just go ahead and interrupt me. That way you don't forget your question. I'd be more than happy to answer anything that comes up, and Scott can chime in as well if he's able to answer any questions as well. So this graph right here, this is I think kind of Seneca's story, as well as a lot of municipalities in Ohio, their story. Revenues have gone down, and I know the 20% cut was the mark that Seneca County looked to hit, and that was pretty similar with a lot of other counties and cities around Ohio. So the expectation that those are going down, and you've foregone some projects, maybe some capital improvement projects that you've had on your to-do list. I know you've went down to a 4-day work week. So everyone's kind of doing what they can to make do with what we got. But also at the same time, while those revenues are going down, I'm sure you realize that the demand for resources, whether that's resources you want to provide to the community in Seneca County or resources you need to continue to operate at the optimal level to provide support to the Seneca County. That doesn't slow down when the revenues decrease. So there's this gap. There's this gap of a lot of unfunded items, or maybe items that are deferred back into your capital plan, things that you put off a little bit to make sure you maintain that. So what we want to show you is how this program can identify some of the things in that gap that we can achieve as far as finding some funding from the existing budget. So we're looking to keep that budget neutral, or even provide a little bit of relief to the general fund. And I'm going to get into some particular examples as well that we've been successful with. City of Fremont, the closest municipality that we've worked with as far as Seneca County is concerned. I'll give you an example of the program we did with them as well. This is a pretty wordy slide, and I apologize. I'm not a fan of putting a ton of words on a slide here, but I wanted to provide an executive summary of the legislation that's used for these energy programs. It's in the Ohio Revised Code, and the whole idea being identifying areas to reduce that energy consumption. There's a lot of areas you're making cuts in the budget right now, which is great. You're able to hold on to that cash position. But as you may realize, there's areas where you could maybe invest some capital and see some savings on the back end. Those savings maybe being energy savings, operational or maintenance dollars that are being used to, if we use an example of maybe LED lighting, old mechanical equipment like boilers or chillers. Normally, those older items are using more energy than what's needed with newer, more efficient equipment. And there's a savings on the back end there. Now, it's probably something you don't want to invest in right now. If you don't know what those savings are, you want to hold on to a cash position. What we want to share is how some of those savings, if they can be identified on the front end, some of those savings in the budget can be utilized to not only pay for those capital improvements, but provide more savings than what it costs to invest in those capital improvements and make them come to fruition. So part of this legislation in the Ohio Revised Code is really taking the risk out of the county's hands. Everything in these programs is designed from an engineering standpoint, as well as a cost and savings analysis for each project in the entire program. So if you view a project as lighting in a building as a project, a boiler upgrade in a building as a project, new windows or roofs is a project in one of these programs. And each of those projects has a cost and a savings associated with it. And what this legislation, I don't want to say forces, but details out companies like ABM to do is to come forward with a cost savings analysis before there's any commitment from the county to say, here's what that item costs, here's the savings associated with it. And in ABM's particular program, our costs, we don't do change orders. So what we say is the cost, if something's unforeseen, our company has to cover it. There's no coming back to the county for change orders. It's something that's built in to reduce that risk to the county standpoint. Additionally, the savings are guaranteed savings. We come back year over year, measure and verify that the savings have been achieved, so that typically there's a lease or a bond that's taken out to have an annual payment on these energy measures, and that annual payment needs to be less than the amount of savings guaranteed by ABM per the legislation. So what that in turn creates is a margin of savings over investment that you would have flowing back into the general fund. All the borrowing that takes place under these programs does not count against general obligation debt. It's listed in the legislation that way. And I'll go into a little bit of what we're doing right now, but borrowing is maybe not the top thing on your list right now. And what we're doing for municipalities around the country right now is investing in these projects. So fronting the capital and then only getting paid back from the county once those savings are realized. So that's something I'll dive into a little bit. I wanted to give kind of a 30,000 foot overview of how this is listed out in the Ohio Revised Code. And I'm going to get into some details from our preliminary analysis to share where we see an opportunity for Seneca County to utilize this as some relief financially in your budget in the years to come here as everyone's starting to recover. So we did a preliminary analysis, and this was a complimentary preliminary analysis. We worked with Stacy and John Logston extensively on this, and I wanted to give you kind of the steps we've gone through to identify what some of the financial benefits could be from this program. First, we gathered utility bills and square footages of buildings. So looking at that, we look at the size of building, the cost per square foot that it's kind of demanding to continue operating, but then also how that building's being utilized. So, for example, the picture here, the county commissioner's building. I know you gentlemen work a lot, but I know that's probably not a 24-hour. It might be close right now, but it's probably not a 24-hour facility as the jail is. So there's a lot of factors when looking at what makes a building efficient relative to its utility spend. Once we had that information together, we completed walkthroughs with our professional engineers. We had them on site, and what we were doing there was really validating, hey, we think this building's maybe using a little bit more energy than what an efficient jail or efficient office county building would normally. And we verified based on some of the items that could be addressed: boilers, chillers, lighting, the insulation of the building, which is building envelope. And that was to give us an idea of if there's an opportunity to use this legislation. We also went and talked to Palmer Energy. They've done a controls project with the county, and we wanted to verify that we could really still use some of the actual hardware of the controls, but get some of the updates and improvements that Stacey and John mentioned and we're looking for to help provide even more savings. And that's something that would be possible for us to achieve. And lastly, some of these things that I'm going to show you on the next slide as far as Seneca's opportunity, we used Energy Star. EUI stands for Energy Usage Index. And so that was a way for us to benchmark and help identify what buildings were maybe spending a little bit more energy than they could. Our technical validation was that walkthrough that I listed. We went through and did interviews, really kind of talking how those buildings were utilized. Captain Paul in the jail took us through. We met Dave Schmeltz, who operates all the mechanical equipment in the jail. That's obviously a large energy using building. So that was something that was focused on. And John did a great job taking us around and filling us in as far as how some of those buildings are being utilized. So lastly, the most important part is financial validation of the program. Would this financially account? My computer's running a little slow here. There we go. So this is a graph showing each building that we went through. You see the Sheriff's Office, jail, JFS, the RTA building, all the way through all the county buildings that we went through. Down on the left side, you'll see some of the projects that could be included in this program. And I don't want to get too far into the technical weeds, and we can if there's questions. But typically what you want to see on this slide is more green than red and yellow. Green are some of the items that are going to be quicker paying back. Those are the items that are going to have more savings than cost spent on that item. Yellow would be about neutral, and then red would be kind of your capital intensive items that you might have that wouldn't pay quickly as back, but would be more of a capital investment. And one thing I would point out is a lot of these items you may need to replace anyways. I know, Stacy, we talked about the annex building and a boiler repair that was, I think ultimately decided on was a repair on that system to make that last a little bit longer. But really looking at some of those things that are coming up, the compressor that was mentioned in the jail earlier in the meeting today, those are things that we're looking to eliminate through this program as well. That kind of volatility in some of the operations, so that there's not a failed item and then we got to pull money from the general fund or from somewhere else in the budget to pay for that expense. So looking at really, I'm going to walk everyone through this slide here. Looking at what the opportunity is on the left side of this chart here, this slide, the savings. There's a utility reallocation. This is an annual savings, about $143,000 annually, based on our analysis, our walkthrough. This is again a preliminary analysis. Conservatively, roughly $143,000 in annual savings. Now, in addition to that, there's a maintenance reallocation, which normally when you have inefficient equipment from the energy side, those are older pieces of equipment, and they also take some dollars to continue to operate from the maintenance side. That would be your repairs, some that you've realized here to keep that annex building going, or at least the boiler in that building. So your repairs, maybe some contracted services to keep those going, but there's a benchmarked cost there to identify what the opportunity may be. And the most important number to look at would be in this white box on the right that's labeled solution value. This would not be the cost of a program of doing this. What that box shows is the amount of funding for capital improvements that would be able to be produced for this program. So generating about $4 million in funding for capital improvements, and that's while keeping your budget neutral. So not increasing spending. Based on what we've seen in our walkthroughs and analysis, you wouldn't need $4 million to achieve those $4 million in savings. We see this as a program that may cost $2 or $3 million to see a $4 million in savings, which would create that margin that you're looking for, or that spread of $1 to $2 million would flow back into the general fund in excess savings. And again, those savings are guaranteed by ABM in our programs. And when I say guaranteed, we come back and measure and verify they've been achieved. If they are not achieved, we have to write a check to the county for the difference. So we have a vested interest in making sure that those are achieved, because these programs can be a term of 15 or 20 years. And ABM does not want to write checks to our clients for that long of a term. So we make sure we get it right. If there's an issue, we do pay the check. We have paid counties, cities, school districts use these programs. We have used it. We have needed to do that before, but we go back on site and fix the issue. We make sure that it is efficient. You are getting that savings, and that's on ABM's dime to do that as well. So again, really trying to reduce the risk to the county as far as these programs are concerned. So lastly, sort of lastly, before we dive into some COVID-related relief, some of the deliverables, and this is really around this is really based around capital planning. So I'll briefly go over these next two slides before getting into the City of Fremont example. This is showing this blue line, which is showing forecasted expenses for a city or county. And again, just an example, not Seneca County's, this isn't Seneca County's graph, but these spikes that you'd see are expected expenses based on when the life expectancy of these items around your building are expected to fail. So when we're looking at how much capital funding does this produce and how do we maximize the amount of budget relief that Seneca County can see, this is going to help us from the standpoint of, maybe looking at identifying in the near term here, let's make sure we capture the items that are 1 to 5 years out. And we'll do that and make sure that we get a lot of quickly paying back improvements as well to fund into to create some relief to the general fund. And as a kind of a way of that graph being identified we go through these buildings from a capital planning standpoint and asset grading all of the equipment in those buildings, larger ticket items, mechanical items, lighting, building envelope, and looking at your A's and B's. Those are good pieces of equipment. Those aren't going to be really included in the program, but we'll give the details, the life expectancy, so that you have a capital planning tool that you can use for budgeting purposes down the road and know what the life expectancy is of all pieces of equipment, to give really a full capital plan for your facilities. Getting into D's and F's, those are some things that would be failing in the nearer term, and really want to look at including in the program while making sure there's a positive savings net to the program. And I mentioned City of Fremont before. City of Fremont, and I really how they came about looking at this program was Mayor Sanchez. They had a boiler fail in their city hall, and Mayor Sanchez was talking to I believe it was Paul Grawl, the auditor, and I said, where's the pot of money that we use to address these failures or these emergency situations? And just like a lot of other cities and counties, there's not always that pot of money sitting there to fix some emergency needs. So they looked at our program, and we provided that capital volatility analysis, which was a grading of equipment to see which equipment was at risk and needing to be replaced. And we were able to replace all at-risk equipment. They did lighting, HVAC, mechanical. They had new roofs, windows. We did a lot of improvements for the city of Fremont. And out of all of the facilities, it was $8.5 million of improvements, which is a lot. It was a lot of capital improvements. The guaranteed funding that our program offered to the city of Fremont was $12 million. So they again had that margins where the savings was greater than the cost of the program. So over the 15-year term of the program, they have $3.5 million flowing back into the general fund as a result of this program. And in addition to that, they don't have to worry about a piece of equipment failing and where they're going to pull that money from in their budget. Everything as far as this program was concerned with ABM, we're equipment agnostic. So as far as the customization from City of Fremont, they were able to include whatever they felt was best in their program. And we were also able to include some non-energy related projects. Security, which was actually, I know you had North Coast Security in maybe a couple of commissioner meetings ago. And North Coast Security was included in the program, and they did, we were able to pay for that through the program. They were able to make improvements to the city hall, more cameras, access control, some things that the city was looking for anyways, as well as some city beautification downtown at the time, which I'm sure it still is. But economic development was big, and the beautification of downtown was something that Fremont was focusing on. So a great example of a successful program with the city of Fremont's opportunity right there. And if that's something you may know Ken Frost or Danny Sanchez, I would recommend reaching out to them, or if you need contact information, I'd be more than happy to offer that to you, to just ask Fremont questions kind of straight from the horse's mouth. And then lastly, leveraging this program as far as some COVID-19 relief is concerned. There's a couple of items here. I think you're already, but so really creating community trust, and you're doing some of these things. I know Roger Coons was in talking about the infrared cameras. There's a couple different types of infrared cameras, and I think that's something you're already taking action on, which is great. Additionally, the picture in the bottom left here is it's called UVC lighting, which is the ray of sunlight that kills the virus. And so these lights are being put in air handling units, air ducts, and I think you had a commissioner meeting a couple weeks back where John Logston was explaining the movement of air and how it's unlikely for COVID-19 to circulate through those systems and really kind of redistribute the virus that way. This is another line of defense. And lastly, I'll mention is Enhanced Clean. ABM, we're a facilities company, so anything dealing with facilities, we do have a janitorial division, and we're helping a lot of organizations open back up. And that's part of our Enhanced Clean. We're in the middle of having that certified as a COVID-19 certified cleaning operation, that it's going to eliminate COVID. And so that's in the process of being certified. But what I wanted to touch on as far as these items were concerned, and you mentioned it earlier in this meeting, whether it's through Senate Bill 310 or FEMA reimbursement, you're probably tracking those expenses. I would imagine any expense with infrared cameras, if you were to do any UVC lighting, tracking those for reimbursement. The only issue with FEMA reimbursements are that they're just that, they're reimbursements. They're not grants. So you are restrained as far as how much capital you'd like to kind of expend to see those measures. These are things we're willing to include in our program. Again, we'll upfront the dollars to get these in your facilities even prior to the execution of a program, and I'll get into the timeline here a little bit. But these are things we're really being flexible with as far as our clients are concerned to provide a financial bridge to making these facilities a little safer as you start to repopulate and maybe even have some of the community in your buildings for the different needs that you provide to the community. And this is ever changing. This is something that NAESCO, which is National Association of Energy Service Companies. So ABM being an energy service company for these types of programs. There's been discussion at the federal level as far as much as $22 billion being allocated for these types of programs into the MUSH market, which would include municipalities, cities, counties, essentially providing funding to shovel-ready programs as a way to get some of these programs off the ground, stimulate the local economy, because there will be work going on in city facilities, as well as addressing capital needs and seeing the savings pay for those needs. This is being discussed. I don't know that it's going to be next week or next month, but we are expecting, based on what we're hearing from NAESCO, as far as there to be some level of relief or funding available for shovel-ready programs, similar to this one that we're sharing with you. The key being it's shovel-ready. It's a first, the way it was really dished out in 08, 09, there were energy funds that were allocated to municipalities or school districts that were implementing some of these measures, and it was a first come, first serve. So there's no reason that we wouldn't see the same situation where it's a first come, first serve. If there's a shovel-ready project, then that city or county would get kind of first go at those relief dollars.
Yeah, and this is something, Joe, that I live in Michigan, everybody. I'm actually in the Grand Rapids area, but I kind of work all over the Great Lakes. In recent discussions with Senator Horn in Michigan, they've already identified a certain individual at the state level who did this in 0809 as far as distributing the funds. At least in Michigan, and coming from a senator, they firmly believe this is going to happen, not tomorrow, but in the coming months. Where these dollars will be made available. And so they're kind of prepping, at least in Michigan. I've heard similar stories in Ohio, as a matter of fact, where people are getting ready. They're not banking on it, but they're getting ready to get these funds, and they know how to get them out into the general market. So the great news is, we're talking today, it's June. This is still in discussion, which means we're a few months off. So if there was interest in pursuing the program into the next steps, we would have the ability to deliver to you guys costs and savings for all the measures, that we could possibly look at, or that you would ask us to, in a timely manner, so that you could, one, tie them into, your 2021 budget, and or if this program, this next stimulus bill comes through, you'd have the numbers available to see what kind of a ultimately coupon you could have towards a project for addressing all your deferred maintenance needs. So in a weird way, the COVID pandemic has given us some other arrows in our quiver, and it kind of turns out at a time when everyone's looking for budget relief, that the government's also potentially handing money for programs like this. So it's actually good timing to kind of dig into this type of program. Not that it's a great time for everybody, around the country right now, but as far as these things go, anytime the government will give you a coupon potentially for this type of work, when you guys happen to have that type of work that you need to do, it's a good time to take a look at it.
And so a little bit of details. I mentioned the normal or traditional way of financing these programs was through borrowing. Right now, and this is something that is really a response to COVID-19, we're trying to make it easier and easier for our clients and our cities and counties, and again, with school districts, ease of executing these programs. We call it a PSA, which is a professional services agreement, where ABM is investing in the county, paying for the equipment or services, if cleaning, those sort of things are of interest, paying for those pieces of equipment to be put into the county buildings, and using the guaranteed savings as a way to pay for those, without having to go out and take a bond out, or a lease to purchase, which is again the traditional method. There's a couple different ways, and really the next step would be a procurement stage to select the energy service company that you would decide to partner with. That would be a process that ABM would be competing in. There's a couple different ways, whether through an RFQ or a cooperative purchasing agreement. ABM's approved by federal GSA for these types of programs, but really looking at a completely customizable solution with the professional services agreement. Turnkey, no third-party documents. The risk is very much shifted directly to ABM to perform, not only from the installation standpoint, make sure these items are going to meet the needs of the facilities, but also make sure that the financial impact is seen from the county side, because if it's not, ABM's on the hook. And that's where trying to create some budget certainty for our municipal clients, and a little bit more of a margin of relief in that general fund for our cities and counties. And this is the last slide, and then will be any questions we'd be more than happy to answer. Wanted to give kind of a timeline of the process, presenting to you all, the commissioners, as well as stakeholders, which is I think everybody on the Zoom call here. Any additional meetings we need to hold to share this program, or the opportunity that Seneca has, we'd be more than happy to do so. But per the legislation, there's a request for qualifications for the county to select the most qualified energy service company to complete this report, this costs and savings analysis report. Once someone's selected, there's a letter of intent that's authorized by the commissioners, which is an intent to move forward to the investment grade audit and identify the savings and costs of each project that would be available to the county. Final scope selection, which is going through those lists of projects, and we provide all that information. That's really a meeting where we kind of roll up our sleeves and say, you know, here's everything laid out. It's essentially a la carte. Let's formulate a program that you feel is best based on costs, savings, where the life expectancy is of some of the pieces of equipment in all these buildings. And then the securing financing of the program is that stage where you decide, is this a lease, is this a bond, or do we want to just have ABM pay for all the improvements and see these savings flow into us before we have any payment due. That doesn't have to be decided until that portion of the program. And then you get into the approvals and implementation. And really, we're on a timeline where I'm not sure exactly when the budget is being discussed for 2021, but to be able to get some of this information in your hands around October timeframe would be something that you could use as a tool to say, you know, let's pick off a couple of quick payback items here because we could use the relief. Or using those excess savings to say, hey, you know what, we have a couple of things that are high on our list for our capital improvement plan, and we'd like to use the funding for that. But this is a program that's designed to eliminate or reduce the county's risk and find a way where we're identifying spend in your budget that's really benefiting the third party that you're sending that money to. It's benefiting them more than it's benefiting the county. We want to redirect that spend to get invested back into Santa Fe County facilities and better utilize how that spend being really sent out to those parties. So be more than happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Joe. That was very, very comprehensive. So I do have a few questions, even though I think you did a great job of explaining this. I want to thank Stacy Wilson and John for investing the time and getting you the information you need and surfacing and bringing this concept to us. I just want to point out, I did reach out to Mayor Sanchez and he verifies what you say. So with Mayor Sanchez and he affirms what you say. And also I want to point out that Commissioner Kirschner for a better part of 6 years has been working diligently on our facilities, and that's culminated in a master plan of facilities. And we are aware that some of the buildings aren't forever buildings for us. So as we go through this, we have spent the money to do a actual facilities plan. And so there are going to be some buildings that we just aren't going to invest in because they're not long for our ledger. A couple things. One, how do you make your money?
Yeah, so great question. So if you view ABM as a general contractor, so we make our money from installing the equipment. We don't take any of the savings. We would be overseeing the project from a project management standpoint, performing those savings. It's really this isn't something where you have designs and then have to go figure out how it's going to get complete. That's completely within the program, and that's how we make our money, is installing that equipment.
Is ABM publicly traded, or do we have access to your financials? Because we're taking a 15-year relationship with you.
Yeah,
absolutely. So
ABM's our sticker symbol, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, so ABM, we are a publicly traded company, so our financials are available online. We're completely transparent in that. We have to be. So you can see ABM's profit margins on there. You can see it's all completely public information. And if you can't find that, I'd be more than happy to share it with you.
Yeah, I'm sure we can find that. No, the last question I had is on these energy savings. I know you verify them and you guarantee them. When we renovated the annex, and Commissioner Kirschner will remember this, we did a very deep dive on converting that to LED lighting. And I just could not prove out cost savings. And so I thought it would be irresponsible to the taxpayers to make that additional investment in cost because the savings wasn't there. So, I would be very interested in seeing the data that you have, especially as it relates to the lights, because, I did a lot of work and talked to a lot of people on that, and we just couldn't prove it out. So, I would like to be able to see that specific data.
And
But
a great way to do that, when we get, and we could do it anytime really, but during that investment grade audit, we'd be willing to also do some retrofits of LED lighting on our own dime, and also measure and verify at the fixture the actual energy usage before and after, and show it to you and kind of work you through the different potential designs of that system. So that's one we can really do and easily do a hands-on demo to kind of show you how those savings are calculated on the front end, what the current fixture uses, and then actually do the work in front of you, and then measure and verify, the usage afterwards, and kind of help you to better understand where those come from, and also work through all the different options you have in LED, because I'm a former lighting designer myself, so I love to do this. I know that's probably boring for most, but this is one that we'd be happy to do, and we could probably do it right in your, the building you're sitting in. As a matter of fact, right above your head would be an example of where we could do something, and just show you how it works.
all right, great. Yeah, I like it. So, other commissioners, Commissioner Kirschner?
I think he's trying to tell us this is all over our head, as a matter of fact.
We try to make engineering speak sound more common, but yeah, it's not exactly like talking about sports, but we try.
Commissioner Kirschner, did you have some questions?
Oh, I have lots of questions, but I think that I would need some time to review the slides that Joe put together, take a deep breath, and hopefully get myself a little more current before I ask the questions.
Okay. Commissioner Paradiso, you're muted. You're muted.
Am I good?
Yeah.
Thanks. I just pulled ABM up there. They have a $3.8 billion balance sheet. So we're off to a good start there. I agree with Commissioner Kirschner. I love the concept, Joe. We are finalizing a master plan. We have many buildings that are going to be here, but we have some buildings that aren't. And, I think I'd like to just spend a little bit of time. This is the first, this was presented to me, obviously. So I'd like to get my arms around it a little bit, and then let's revisit it.
That's fair. Any additional information we'd be happy to provide, and Stacy, we can get that to you, and anything that you need, we'd be more than happy to share.
Commissioner Kirschner chairs our Buildings and Grounds Committee, and I'm sure he will take the lead on this.
Yeah, I would go one step further, Joe, and say that what I'd like to do is have maybe a week to review it and have you either do the Zoom thing or stop in so that we can kind of, without making any decisions, all get together and get those questions narrowed down. Because I love the concept, I love the idea. Now, and I will tell you, this is not the first time that we've been through this. We had this conversation 3 or 4 times in the 6 years I've been here. But I do think it's time to look at it very seriously, and I think that John and Stacy are confident in your company. So that gives me a lot of confidence in reviewing this strongly.
Appreciate that very much.
Well said.
Okay, if there's no other questions, Stacy, did you have any questions? I mean, you've been living this for a while, so you've probably had them all answered.
Nope, I don't have any questions.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Scott, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
All right. Be safe, everybody.
Yep. All right, we'll go on with the new business.
Okay, new business. All right, I have some supplemental appropriations. We've got a couple in for the airport. I think we put the revenue, and Budget Commission put the revenue in place at the last Budget Commission. So now we need to put the money for the land acquisition in place. So we did a sub-app into land acquisition for the $586,481. The next one I have is also for the airport. The engineering, when we closed the purchase order, we weren't sure we were going to move forward with the rest of this project, so we didn't put the purchase order or the funds back in place, but it had rolled over. So for their contract service, $57,906.91, which is all part of the money that we will get back. Some portion isn't able to be reimbursed, but those parts we've already paid. The next one I have is for the temperature scanner, computer software, accessories. This is out of the Justice Center operating fund, $5,000 for equipment. I have a supplemental request from the auditor's office. This is for $5,466.28. This is for Wolf Creek. Mark Zimmerman did all of the assessments for us, and the auditor has the ability and by Ohio Revised Code can charge 2% on top of those fees, which she had done. So those fees had come out of that line. It won't change our advance, getting our advance paid back. She just needs that put it into the other expense line so she can expense it back over to general fund. So that's in the other expense line. I think that might be
that amount. So that amount represents 2%.
2% of the total. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
And then I have the rest of them that are on the agenda. I have the resolution authorizing the agreement contract with Smith Paving and Excavating for the Village of Bloomville, Ohio sidewalk replacement project to be paid with CDBG funds, and authorizing the president of the board of commissioners to sign all documents. Total amount $53,500. I have a resolution authorizing the disposal of unneeded, obsolete, or unfit county-owned property. This is a 2003 Durango, 2007 Caravan, 2010 Crown Victoria, and a 2011 Crown Vic. These are all the sheriff's, and they were just sitting in the back of his lot. He feels they were unsafe, so he reached out to the Highway 101. So they're giving us $1,200 for those vehicles. Sheriff didn't feel comfortable enough to put those on Gov Deals to sell. So I have a resolution authorizing contract service agreement with Kelly Gorey of Rich Gillis Law Group, LLC, for legal services on behalf of the Seneca County Board of Revisions. I have a resolution authorizing the 2021 Technical Specialized Consulting Agreement with Local Government Services, LLC, on behalf of the Seneca County Auditor, retroactive to June 1st, 2020. And then if you guys are okay with adding that additional resolution for the Senate Bill 310, I'd like to get it in there just so we're covered. We are already signed up as requested to do so. We have done that. So it's just a matter of fulfilling the requirements of the Ohio Senate Bill 310 for the passage of a resolution in order to receive and expend federal funds under Section 5001 of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities CARES Act. I did send it to Mike Ditto quickly, and he thought it was a good idea. So those are all I have.
All right. Anything we want to pull out of there separately? Are we good with them as a group?
Yeah, I just have a couple housekeeping things under the resolution about Bloomville, allowing the president of the board to sign. That's a capital S. It says Cigna. I think we probably ought to modify that to make sure it says sign.
Oh, okay.
And then under the technical special consulting agreement, what is that? What does that entail, Stacy? I'm not aware of that.
I think she's done this for a couple years now. It is specialized consulting services provided. It says auditors authorized by ORC 32517 to contract for services for fiscal and management consulting to aid in the execution of her powers and duties as county auditor.
Well, I'm just as a technical point, I thought we were trying to eliminate contracts that we had that were existing, that we could get by with them for a while.
Yes, and this is one that looks like $2,500 is out of the general fund and $2,500 is out of the real estate assessment fund.
I mean, you know, we've canceled contracts with TSEP. We've canceled contracts with our consulting people in Columbus. We've canceled, you know, numerous other contracts along the way here. I mean, I'm not certain how necessary, if you will, for lack of a better word, this is to the ongoing operation, but I think it's worth considering.
I could ask her to come explain it at next board if that would help.
What do you guys think? I mean, we're talking about canceling contracts here. Am I the lone wolf here, or what's going on?
No, I think we should pull it and one of us have a conversation with her.
I'm good with that. I support that.
The other contract with Kelly Gorey, you know, she's important to the functioning of the Board of Revisions.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I do. So I will move for approval of all the new business supplemental appropriations and authorizations, and actually all of them pending a conversation regarding the technical consulting agreement.
Okay. Tony, second?
Second. Yeah.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Kirschner,
Yes.
Commissioner Paradiso,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes. Stacy, just a point of clarification. I see we're dumping some old cruisers. Where are we at with the sheriff and his fleet? Are we looking at seeing something this year?
He has not asked for another vehicle this year. I think he understands what we're going through. Obviously, if maybe some revenue turns around, he may ask, but he is working with what he's got right now. These were non-functioning basic vehicles, so they weren't being used.
So that's where we go when we're no longer useful, back behind the sheriff's office, and just stand there waiting to be sold. Okay.
They do seem pretty old. I just assumed we automatically got rid of them, but he must have kept a few around just in case.
Just in case.
I don't have an answer for that.
Okay, we'll go on to public comments. And I'd like Bryce Riggs, are you on? Pretty exciting news from your professional life. So congratulations from all of us for getting appointed as new exec at the Chamber of Commerce. We have a strong relationship, and we hope to continue that. So what say you?
For sure. So I start July 1, still here at Tiffin University. As you can tell, really looking forward to getting started. And as you mentioned, Commissioner Thomas, I have a great relationship with the commissioners, and I look forward to strengthening that relationship and doing our best to attract guests into our community and make it a great place to live, work, and play and do business. So really looking forward to getting started and already doing a few things already. So just looking forward to get things rolling.
Commissioner Thomas was talking about you this morning on the radio.
Oh gosh, hopefully it was good.
Well, you're the leader. You're that big offensive lineman.
But it was all good, Bryce. I was real
good.
Yeah.
But congratulations,
Look forward to working with you,
Bryce. And we're looking forward to the Visitors Bureau as well. You know, your work with the Chamber and Destination Seneca County, and it's given everything that the situation we're in now, it's probably as important as ever that small businesses and tourism, and we all kind of continue to work to make things better. So
for sure.
Congratulations.
It's heads in beds, so that will be our goal, and we're looking forward to it.
Would you like to make any other comments?
No, I'm just really appreciative of the committee as well as the commissioners and all the stakeholders in the process. I've really enjoyed the work we've done so far. I'm really looking forward to becoming back on the team to make things happen. So thanks again, guys.
Under normal conditions, today would be the day of the Chamber golf outing, and there will be hundreds of people on Mohawk Golf Course today representing the Chamber, right?
Yep. We'll be back in August. Hopefully everything will be okay, but August will be our new time frame for that.
Gotcha.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I'd like to bring in Audrey Flood, second half of the power couple here.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, so just one thing kind of from the TSEP update, we have been hosting those weekly business forums where any businesses can jump in on a call with us and ask questions, get feedback from us, from the chamber, from the health commissioner, and, you know, kind of ask anything that would help their business. We are now going to move those to monthly meetings. There have been, you know, less and less updates due to COVID related announcements and information. So we are going to move those. Those will be monthly local business forum instead of weekly. So they will be the second Wednesday of each month. So the next one will be July 8th, and those are going to remain at 10 a.m. So just continue to let businesses know if they ever want to jump in and talk to us or other businesses or, you know, any other local leaders. They are always welcome to jump on those calls. Again, second Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m. And the information to join those is on any of our organizations on our websites and on our Facebook pages. Other than that, no real updates from TSEP other than, you know, just a reminder for any businesses needing help to reach out to us and see what resources we can hook you up with.
Thank you. Jimmy, do we have anybody else that?
I don't have any right now, but if you want to, we can open up the microphones and see if anybody comes forward.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, gonna do that now. You know, I don't know if I can do that now. There's no unmute all button. No, it's the new Zoom update. All right, I'm going to, I guess I'll go.
If anybody has a public comment, just please put it in the chat and we'll unmute you. But I don't see anybody raising their hand. I have two other announcements. One is at 3:30, the County Commissioners Association of Ohio call, and the Office of Budget Management will be on that call, the director. So that might help us with some of these CARES Act questions. And also, I want to thank all the folks who are out restoring power to Seneca County. We still have people out of power, myself included. I heard the mayor's out of power. So I appreciate everybody who's out there restoring power. And in that vein, the solid waste district office is closed today. Apparently there's some power out in Fremont as well. So if you have any questions for the solid waste district, reach out either way. So if there's no one else that...
Shane, we have one more comment here in the chat.
Hey guys, it's Erin from the Extension Office. I just wanted to give you guys an update on our end of things for the fair. Since they are moving forward, we're going to be starting our planning for judging. Our pre-fair judging is July 15th and 18th, and we're going to be offering both in-person judging for the miscellaneous projects and a virtual option for families who do not feel comfortable about doing in-person judging. Both of those are going to take place out at the fairgrounds, so we have space to spread out so people aren't, jumbled together. We're working on our plans for the booth building to probably be very simple this year, just so we can display those miscellaneous projects, and working on plans to still hold our Clover Bud graduation, style show, those kinds of things to showcase those kids that do not have livestock projects. If you get a chance to check out our Facebook page this week as well, Katie is highlighting all of our camp counselors and the work they've been putting into it. We are holding our virtual 4-H camp this week, and we have about 40 participants in it. So that's what we're doing out at the Extension Office right now.
Thank you. That's good update.
Thank you.
All right, not seeing anything else, we'll go ahead and adjourn.
Wait a minute. I have one resolution that I missed. Sorry, Shane. One more. Sorry. This is...
Go to your room.
Go to my room. I am in my room.
Yeah.
I do have a financial request from the juvenile probate court for equipment for $14,321. They are putting this through the grant that Charlene is managing for us for the courts, law enforcement. They're going to be able to submit this through that. This is a not a utility card, a conference card that they use in the courtroom. I don't know if Charlene wants to comment on that, but it was verified that this could be submitted through that. So.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve.
I will second.
Roll call, Nikki?
Commissioner Kirschner,
Yes.
Commissioner Paradiso,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Stay in your room. Any other public comments? All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Good meeting.